They would just double the budget overnight because it's working so well, which in the short term might look like it's a good idea, but in the both short term and the midterm, like you would just have a very fluctuative KPIs, and almost always you would lose the efficiency.
What can you learn from someone who scaled ad revenue to 8 digits? Hello and welcome to Mobile Heroes Uncensored. My name is John Couture. My co-host, as always, of course, is Peggy Ann Saltz. And we are both super excited to find out what can you learn from scaling ad spend to massive, massive levels. Mostly for me, be like, where's the nearest restroom? But I'm sure there's much more to unpack. Peggy, who are we talking to?
I think we've got someone, John, who's got growth in his DNA because he's Alper Taner. He's growth marketer at Gorillas, but he's also got 10 years experience in marketing, 8 years in performance marketing, and he is freelance growth consultant, full stack marketer, strategist, all of that in one. And the numbers that you're mentioning, the 9-digit, the 8-digit, they really speak volumes. He has managed thousands of UA campaigns and worked with 50 plus apps, 10 plus verticals around the world, including unicorns like Gorillas. So he specializes in scaling e-commerce and subscription apps, paid user base by 5x to 50x range, giving you some more eye-watering numbers here. And he's going to share some insights into how he scales growth efficiently with us today. Welcome, Alper.
Thank you, everyone. Hi.
Super pumped to have you, Alper. I mean, if I'm a client, I want the 60x. I'm not signing up for the 5x. So just so you know, in case I come to you with my 8-figure budget, I want the 60x growth. Just a little hint here. Hey, let's get started. You're a growth marketer. You're a strategist. When people call you or email you or whatever they do, what do they want? And what does it take to deliver it?
So typically they would call in to say like, hey, we need to grow yesterday. And, that's always a challenge. And then I typically help companies already spending like 6 digits per month and help them to get to 7-digit plus per month as fast as possible, as efficient as possible. And that's like how I engage with the projects. It's always starting on the MarTech side of things, where we ensure the technical infrastructure when it comes to in-app analytics, attribution, and all the MarTech stack is working in harmony before scaling. And then we focus on each channel and maximize the opportunities.
Alper, I was going to say, as I was listening to you there, I mean, I could scale somebody's ad budget from 6 digits to 7 digits to 8. I could go to 10. I could go to the moon here. But
give him a credit card.
But I think the key is doing it in a way that's effective, and there's ROI positive, there's ROAS, all that stuff. What helps you as a growth consultant to make the right decisions when you're scaling that kind of money?
Yeah, so I mean, you can always spend a lot of money, which will help you grow. But scaling is not just about, I think, increasing spend. And that's, I think, the misconception. Scaling is more about, I think, maximize the opportunities while keeping the efficiency to a certain extent to stay more similar. And of course, you're expected to lose some of the efficiency while scaling, but then it's about finding the balance strategically. So what I mean by that is like you might lose 20% of the efficiency of the current campaigns, but if you're getting 200 higher new paid users, that would be probably fine, depending, of course, on the company objectives and let's say the OKRs and all that. It's important to understand all this when it comes to product virality, conversion rates, market dynamics, and the campaign dynamics and so on. And then you need to act based on the feedback from the campaigns. So some of the mistakes I see the clients do or the projects I work with do, they're happy with the performance, then they would just go like 50% higher, or they would just double the budget overnight because it's working so well, which in the short term might look like it's a good idea, but in the both short term and the midterm, like you would just have a very fluctuative KPIs, and almost always you would lose the efficiency, which is not the best. So approach is always it's small increments to increase the budgets. And you would only increase the budget if you're getting the satisfactory KPIs from the campaign. I think that's usually the difference between just spending the money versus scaling efficiently and as fast as possible. And it's important not to underestimate the power of not the compounding interest, but in this case, like more exponential growth, because you can just go by 20% increments when it comes to, bid or budget increases. And just $100 would become like $600 in just 10 days. And then another 10 days, that could become just 3-something K per day. So, and that's already good enough. And at the higher scale, if you were spending mid-level 6 digits, it only takes 4 times increase by 20% to reach 7 digits per month. So you shouldn't be concerned about increasing the spend. You should be concerned about, okay, can I get more of this efficiency by spending a little higher? Or, you want to find that sweet spot depending on the company objectives and your targets, basically.
Do you always lose efficiency by scaling ad spend? I totally understand it. You've got more dollars chasing potentially the same number of users. You're increasing maybe your channels, and maybe you're using the ones that are a little less effective as well because you have to spread more dollars around. But have you ever seen situations where you increase your spend and you scale up significantly, but your efficiency actually grows or stays equivalent?
There are definitely those scenarios because it's a bit of a chicken egg, right? The algorithms need signals. So at the beginning, they might not know your app or your audience or your game like so well. So more you feed the algorithm, the better it gets, finding the next best audience. So there are cases that more you scale, it actually gets better. That also heavily depends on your product characteristics, your K factor and virality and all that, and then how much of impact it has on organics and so on, and the brand awareness, of course, that goes up. So basically, when you scale, so brand awareness goes up, algo learns better and all that. So these typically lead to positive results. But at the same time, if you do this too fast, then you lose the learning phase. So you need to always keep the algo in the learning phase and just try with small increments at a time. Then algo just gets better every time, in theory. Of course, this is not just a linear curve. You need to do a lot of adjustments here and there, depending on the type of the platform, the OS, channel, and all that, and also vertical, of course. So it's not a smooth ride for sure, but there are definitely things you need to take care of when it comes to understanding the way algorithms work, the way creative ad fatigue works, and also finding the right time to increase the budgets. And so if you find like the good balance, and you find the good balance just by testing. So, of course, the account managers will tell you differently. They're like, oh, don't touch for a month and stuff like that. Maybe a bit extreme, months a bit extreme. But then you need to listen to your own data. That's what I always say. Like, there is, of course, best practices, but none of the best practices should be just blindly applied to every account. You should definitely test them because they're best practices. It worked for other million advertisers. And there are, of course, some best practices that you must be doing, like, I don't know, you don't change bids 5 times a day and stuff like that. That is quite obvious. But anything else, you should be interpreting, I think, from your own data set. And that's where I typically help. So I never come in to pitch, hey, I'm the best in this and this and that. I say, hey, I can come in and I can maximize the opportunity that you have at the same efficiency or the similar efficiency. So then we start a project, and then sometimes we do see like 6x in 2.5 months with 15% less efficiency. But hey, we have a 6x growth. So not like no one cares about that 15%, but it's on the extreme ends, like 500% increase versus 15%. It's not comparable. So
that makes sense. And Peggy, it totally blows my theory that any idiot can scale ad spend out of the water. So
no, I'm fascinated with the complexity of this and everything you need to be watching. I was thinking, okay, teaching the algorithms, that has its time, but there's timing itself. There's understanding when you have a blockbuster success on your hands. There's not doing it too quickly. A lot of things to be considering. What did you do, or what did you consider when you were scaling Gorillas. So how did you help Gorillas scale on performance marketing?
I mean, at the beginning, we started with MarTech side of things to make sure that we track everything correctly, that we can calculate the customer acquisition cost, the ROAS, and all these metrics. And then we basically started scaling, I would call it vertically. And vertical would mean like increasing the spend on the channels that we're already active in. And then once the marginal unit cost is not ideal anymore, then you would start spending more on the other channels / horizontally. We started quite small, and then of course it took off quite fast because the business itself was also growing fast. So then the performance marketing team was supporting that growth, of course, and these goes hand in hand. And I would say definitely the technical infrastructure side of things, and then focusing on the most promising channels that you can easily scale. So, which would be the major self-advertising networks, basically.
Mm-hmm. You lead us to that point. I have to take you there, Alper, though. You're talking about the most promising channels. Which channels have the most potential, in your opinion?
I mean, things are changing in the last months, of course, but still, when you go with like Meta, Google, Apple, and Snap, which are typically my top 4, and then the 5th one would be more TikTok / DSPs. And the reason is like this, where most of the people I know spending the most of their budget here, and there's a reason for that. They might not be the most efficient and so on, but then at the end of the day, you need to catch that wave. Okay, are you looking for the cheapest channel and how much that cheapest channel can bring in for you? Versus are you okay with 10% worse efficiency, but you can get like hundreds of thousands of paid customers from here? So that's the way to look at it. I mean, there are definitely a lot more when it comes to evaluating the channel scalability, because you want to make sure that the channel is reliable, that channel can take what you give it to it, and so on. Because there are many cases that you just want to spend more, and then the KPIs would completely be different. Let's say the first $200,000 versus the next $200,000. It wouldn't make sense to spend the second half of the 400,000 because it would be like double worse, and that's just because of your limited audience and saturation of the market / brand / the audience and so on. So that's why there is no one big thing, but I would say this main 4 channels are definitely on my top 4, as that's where everyone is spending most and getting the best buck out of it.
That is really interesting, hey, because you have an ad network that maybe they've got some premium publishers that they work with. They got some premium inventory, right? And you're accessing that with your first $200,000. All of a sudden you double your spend there, and you got all these executives there looking, okay, what am I going to do? Where am I going to put this money? And they're bringing on new publishers, bringing on new supply. And is it the same quality and all that other stuff, right? So scaling slowly makes some sense. We talked earlier about scaling users 5 to 50x, and I joked that I would sign up for the 50x. Is there a result that you've had in a campaign in your career that shocked you, totally surprised you, like blew you out of the water?
I think the 50x is probably one, because then, I mean, everything is pretty much a surprise for me, because the beauty of the reason is the following. I never promise anything on the numbers, but what I promise is I will be surely working on maximizing the opportunities that we currently have. And that could be 2x, that could be 20x, that could be 30x. We don't know. I could also say like 2x is a pretty impressive growth for some well-established companies who are already spending 8 digits. They exist for 10 plus years. Like, they would be in love with me when we have a 2x growth. And on the other hand, some companies, they're not happy. They're like, hey, this is just 10x. Like, can we do more? And so on. So it's really relative. I think it really depends on the stage of the company. But yeah, as I said, like, I never promise anything on the numbers. I have my track record. I'm like, this is what I can do when we have our teamwork. And I never claim, hey, I will do this myself only for you and so on. Like, but I set up the stage where we can all collaborate and make things happen through the frameworks, through the, the health checks and audits and so on. And then we just look back after 6 months or a year. We're like, oh, it actually was a 20x growth year. but no one knew about the number when we are working on it, because we are just very agile. We're looking at the number, and I would never set up a campaign with the aim of 20x. Of course, you would have some targets and so on, like before you set up the campaigns. Okay, is it about increasing the efficiency? Or like I would ask, for example, if it's about increasing the efficiency or increasing the scale, and then everyone would always say both, right? And then you try to balance, okay, which one is a bit more important? Like then you decide on, okay, 70-30 or 50-50 and so on, to find the right balance based on the basic company goals. But long story short, nothing was very surprising except the 50x one. So
cool.
That we didn't foresee. Yeah.
That was the milestone. We've talked about your accomplishments, Alper. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the mistakes, right? The marketing nightmares that marketers make and have when they want to scale. What is one, and how can they be avoided?
I already mentioned about the one about the budget increases or bid increase or decreases like significantly and so on. Another one would be, I talked to someone recently who mentioned, oh yeah, like we are fighting with ad fatigue, like we refresh creatives every week and this and that. I'm like, okay, which channels, TikTok might be all right because TikTok is really fast consuming. They're like, yeah, like we do that on UAC and like Google Ad campaigns, and we do that on Meta ads and so on. I'm like, whoa, okay, like how do you do it and so on? So for example, what they were doing is they would upload a new creative into the ad set every time one of them is not performing well. So they would touch in and out like on a weekly basis, and they're spending quite significant numbers, not exactly on these campaigns, but overall. And they were always like, oh, it's very fluctuating, although we're spending so much and so on. And then we did kind of through some sort of a checklist to see what they're up to. And I was quite shocked because it's like a large team and so on. And how I would do it would be running it at least, for example, 2 weeks. And then I wouldn't change things one by one. I would do more, for example, on the meta side, like I would do more a bulk upload. Who are the test winners from the previous tests? And then I would put them into that ad set. And then whenever I need to exchange the creatives, I would do it within the ad group. But so just if you upload once, you could upload like as many as you can. Of course, there are the limits. And then, so let's give an example of 20 in this case. And then you could swap that 20 within the ad set. You do the upload once. And then when you turn them on and off, you don't touch the learning phase. And this learning phase is so important, in my opinion, for all the platforms, not just Google and Facebook and so on, but same for like the Twitters and TikToks and so on. I would say everything pretty much Apple search ads, because that's just a CPC bidding. And I don't believe there is a really big learning algorithm yet. You bid higher, it's pretty straightforward, although there are different strategies to be taken care while scaling, because not everything is intuitive. For example, just because I just mentioned Apple search ads, just because you increase bid doesn't mean you're going to get more volume, right? But in the logic, you're like, yeah, I bid more, I win more auctions, and I get more traffic. Well, yeah, it can happen, but that's not 100% for sure. But then it's about understanding that data and so on. Like I saw some accounts, they're bidding like $500 plus for a click. And they're like, yeah, we want to get more and more. They bid 600, 700 and so on. I mean, they would never pay that eventually. Yes. Like, at least for now, Apple is not doing that. So they might change strategy at some point that, oh, you wanted to pay 500? There you go. $500, the CPT. It is definitely dangerous, but it doesn't work like that. Just because you go from 500 to 700 will not get you more traffic necessarily. You need to do some other type of tactics and strategies to make sure that, not make sure, but like help you get more traffic and so on. It's relevancy and all that stuff. So that's why you should always see what the data says. You should understand the algo, and instead of just going blunt and uploading just chunk creatives in, because you are fighting the ad fatigue, and just also testing creatives doesn't mean that there are ways of doing things. And that's where I spend my 8 years day in, day out. And what I do is I just try to share my experience. And I don't think there is one size fits all type of best practices. I've seen really individual accounts that are good in some type of campaigns, like lookalikes would work a lot more better, but that doesn't mean lookalikes would work for everyone. It of course depends on the, the seed audience and how much algo knows about the account, like the learnings at the ad account level and all the levels and so on. And that's why there's no like one medicine for all, I think, in the UA.
It's actually a good point, kind of a segue point to our next question, because we talked a lot about budget, but you mentioned creatives significantly in the last answer. And scaling isn't just about increasing the budget. You need a ton of creatives, right? You need a ton of creatives to avoid the ad fatigue that you're talking about. What are the best strategies to build a lot of creatives that don't suck?
Yeah, I think like creative variety is definitely part of scaling, especially if you're going from like hundreds per day to thousands per day. That makes it quite different in terms of like the perception of the user, not really the perception, but like your ad frequency obviously goes up, and you want to convey a story through multiple ads, through multiple USPs, each ad telling a different USP and stuff like that you want to build that funnel. And because you increase the spend, then users are more likely to get ad blind. That we see especially on TikTok, right? Because our brains are wired to watch something different. It takes milliseconds to see, oh, I've seen this before, and then you just like a swipe, and that's like a really millisecond, and we see that from also the ad metrics, and same on Snapchat. So this is happening regardless. It could be like you could spend less but run the same ad for a month, or you could spend significantly high budgets for a week. You might run into same basically issues. In order to fight that, you need to ensure you have a wide variety of creative concepts, from animation to UGC, real people and all that. And within those kind of visual concepts, then you would have all this type of different approaches to the problem, different approaches to the solution. And then you have, of course, your personas and stuff. These days, we just go with growth targeting the most. Our creatives are the ones that are going after our personas. And that's how the algorithm also learns. Again, like it's all about feeding the algorithm in the right way. And then once the algorithm stops receiving the signals from the audience in terms of the ad engagement, then that definitely impacts your campaign performance. I've seen ads that we spent like 7 digits on a single ad because it just performs, right? But it's not forever. And then you need to ensure to look into the IPM of the creative and how the efficiency changes over time. Because one of the misconceptions, like people look at, like some large brands I know, they look at just last 30 days because of their, the product life cycle and all that stuff and multiple purchases and all that. And then they're like, oh yeah, last 30 days, this is a great ad. I'm like, yeah, but what about last 7 days? Like, is it last 14 days? Is it, 30 days is a massive like time frame for some brands. I think for most brands, like, and there's definitely change between 7, 14 and 30 day time frame in terms of performance. And also maybe going back to the mistakes and / the creative strategy, like don't wait until they die. It's like, I don't know. That's a very, I think, yeah, definitely. Like everyone waits until the creative hits rock bottom and they're like, oh shit, we have no other creatives to replace this with. And then they're like, they try something. They're like, and then this new creative didn't work, but instead you would have your, like the substitute kind of benchmark, like in a soccer game, that they're ready. Yeah. Your best players are ready to
in the game. There you go, getting good results. Don't have that up and then down and then up and then down and then up and down. Yeah. Kind of maintain steady state growth.
Exactly. And then you don't wait until a player dies, right? Like you see he's tired, then that's when you change. I don't know why we don't do that in the UA world, right? A lot of marketers, they just wait until the ad dies. Oh, it doesn't deliver anymore. I'm like, yeah, what about you checking it last week that you already see that IPM is going down, the engagement is going down, and then you already changed last week and then it doesn't affect your whole campaign performance and stuff like that. Or a bad ad eating up the whole budget and so on. I think these are the stuff that is easily preventable, right? If you check the data on a day-to-day basis and in set of time frames. And so this creative visualization reports and stuff, analytics, I think getting a lot more importance. It was always important, but with less emphasis on the targeting, more emphasis on the creative, as that's where we are we've been shifting it for a while, but it's just getting more important every day. It's important to look at the metrics, not in bulk, but slice and dice it into different time frames and really understand why it works, and then iterate on the winners and understand why something doesn't work, just to give a direction to your next test.
Excellent.
So that's, I think, important.
Just trying to understand, and maybe I'll dig a bit deeper there, because I'm thinking what you said. We need to have creatives according to persona. At the same time, we need to stockpile them a bit and be ready to switch them in and out, not wait till they die.
Yeah.
There's probably not like the answer here, but I would like to hear from you because you are a practitioner, Alper. How can marketers do that? It's not just about having fresh creatives. There's also that persona, and that's going to be shifting all the time. So I'm thinking, what do? You can flip a coin almost here, but there's got to be something smarter and more sophisticated.
I mean, you need to look at what creatives would work, and then which personas the winning creatives are talking to. So, and then you want to do, you see that, okay, like this kind of creative that is mostly talking to, women between like 25, 34, because that's what you also showed in the ad. And that is addressing the segment's issues and like propose a solution. And you see that it's really good at engagement, really good lower funnel events. And then you would want to activate ads that are similar to this one, kind of to validate the concept. Okay, is it just a one lucky ad, or is it really this segment is working really well for us? Then, the data will tell you. Then you would switch on similar ads. And then if you see the similar performance, because they're speaking kind of about the same USPs with similar visuals, or it doesn't have to be similar visuals, but if they're talking to the same segment, and if you see the other ones that don't perform, and you look at similarities basically between the winners and between the losers, and then you want to do more of the winner ones and less of the loser ones in a way. And that's how you kind of try to kill the randomness. Okay, which creative do I go with? Like if you see, and you have to see the patterns. That's why when you create your creative strategy, it's not about just a duration. It's not just about the format. You need to really slice and dice the kind of the reverse engineer the creative brief and look at the chunks. Okay, this is the opening. This is what makes it interesting. The first 3 seconds. This is the thumbnail. And this is the main character. This is the USP. This is the CTA. And then, of course, the duration and all that stuff comes in. But that's how you would look at the creative. Then you would easily see the commonalities between the losers and winners a lot more easier. Then I'd never run into an issue, we don't know what creative works and we don't know why. No, that's because you didn't try to understand it well enough and you didn't analyze it well to understand it better, basically. But I don't think if you analyze it well, random is not the issue unless your budgets are very small and you don't have significant data. And then every time a different type of segment creative work, then that might be something. And this I understand this can happen. Then you just need to do more testing to validate those hypotheses.
So we have to ask it. We really do have to ask it because we've had it on a couple shows and it's got to be top of mind, right? How are you tackling SKAN 4? How are you staying on top of what is essentially a moving target for marketers right now?
SKAN, SKAN 4, I mean, it's great.
Great, he says laughing.
That's what I said. Somebody pay you to say it's great? That's the first time I've heard it.
Yeah, well, with some irony. I mean, no, it is great. Like I heard good things. There's a light. There's not so much actionable points, I think, at this time, but definitely suggest marketers to look into concepts / the terms like what is the crowd anonymity, what are the 3 conversion thresholds, and start thinking how. Also, this multiple postbacks can help them optimize campaigns better because most of the advertisers, they have their 24-hour window for the conversion window. And then that's kind of it. They're like, if they made it, they won. This is what I do. And if they didn't make it, I don't want them anymore, And I think this will help us shift to a bit more longer term optimization / the vision when it comes to that. And then with the 4 digits that are coming in will help us, I think, utilize a lot more data points we'll see if we can use some of them for creative or not. Like, I think there's not so much clarity on that yet, but that's promising. Like, we're going from like 2 digits almost to 4 digits. That's the type of growth that I like to see in my campaigns as well. So, so excited for it and trying to understand it. We probably still have time. I don't see that happening also in the next 1-2 months. And then there's Christmas. So let's see. But it's definitely good time already to start looking into documentation, understand by yourself, watch some webinars, see what other experts are talking about. And then what is important is to adapt it right away from understanding perspective and actionable insights perspective, and not like with the new SKAN, it came and 6 months later people still didn't know what to do. But hopefully I think that's now the gap is closing, because we had the 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. What I'm kind of a bit concerned is because in my experience with the SKAN 2.0, when they introduced the VTA, it took the publishers to kind of integrate that VTA first. And then it took some time for MMPs to integrate with that SKAN VTA. And then, so basically it was, I think, released in Feb last year. And then I think Facebook only adapted in like October or something. And then some MMPs got on the wagon like in Q4. So like, although it was released in Feb, I only could use it practically in December. And we still have some ad platforms that don't use the VTA, although, yeah, it is available. So I wonder how it's going to be with the 4.0 will be introduced, and then publishers need to adopt, then, MMPs need to do that. And it will be, I don't know if you will randomly receive this second postbacks, and then, but the others are still on 3.0. And
you'll definitely have that.
See, and I don't
you will definitely have that, because there will be people on older versions of iOS. Different components of the ecosystem will be on different versions as well. So there is going to be a bit of a shit show starting in November, December, maybe January. We'll see how it goes. Hey, it keeps it fresh, I guess. And you know what? Guess what, Alper? Job security. Job security for consultants. You know what? Big bonus from Apple just for you. Awesome. Well, let's end here. We got to bring this to an end briefly. What's your top tip for mobile marketers who are looking to scale ad spend?
Don't rush just because your investors tell so or your founder tells so. Listen to data in a way, and always challenge the status quo. Like, what I always see is, I ask people, why do you do this? Just not judging, but I'm like,
I bet you come across a little judgy sometimes.
It depends on how bad is the structure. I'm like, why are you doing this in a way? I just want to understand. And they're like, oh, because the person before me 2 years ago were doing that, and that's why I'm doing this, because that's how it works. I'm like, yeah, but 2 years ago was like, it's like 10 years ago in the mobile world now. So people need to adapt. Like, whenever they get on board a new ad account, new job, and it doesn't matter like it's anything new. I think still, just because it's new doesn't mean that it is there to stay forever. I think it's always important to challenge the status quo, and then don't apply these best practices just blindly just because someone told you so, because whatever works for them might not work for you, and so on. And it's important to find your own answers from your own account, and don't be afraid to test, I guess, because it's always like, oh, but I don't want to touch, okay, I understand you don't want to touch the campaign that already works really great, but it doesn't mean you're not going to do testing under other campaigns and so on. And I think always having one live test it can sound super basic, right? I can assure you there are probably thousands plus or million, if not millions, of advertisers that don't have at least one live test at all times.
I like that tip. I like that tip.
Platforms.
Always be running one live test. I also like your second tip, which is don't be in a rush, because I've seen it. The VCs give you a stack of cash and the CEO says growth at all costs because I'm starting to look at my next round, and boom, you start spending that money and the bids go up and the returns don't come. And it's really, really challenging. It might be easier to do in today's environment where everybody's kind of tightening the purse strings a little bit. My might be easier to take a little bit of time. In any case, Alper, it has been great chatting with you about how to scale ad spend. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Yeah,
We know
right.
you're on vacation. You're in Turkey right now, and you're on vacation talking to Peggy and talking to me. Thank you for taking the time.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Alper. And thanks for the crash course. It was very, very detailed. Sometimes with these high-level answers, we did get the look at your data and watch your user, but we did get some really actionable tips here. So thanks so much for sharing.
And thank you to all listeners. We really do appreciate you. Hope you're enjoying it. Let us know on social if you are.
And let us know if you want to come and we'll have you on the show. If you're a mobile hero or you know of someone who is, then fill out the interest form over at shorturl.at/JKSKT.
Also, Liftoff has a Slack for mobile heroes and people in the mobile ecosystem. There's a link on the screen, and if you're listening to the podcast, it's at info.liftoff.io/Slack-signup. It's pretty cool. There's smart people there, and you know what? They probably need you too.
And you have probably been completely blown away by all the insights on this show, and you want your transcript, and you can have it because the transcripts are over at Liftoff's website. Go to liftoff.io, click on Heroes, and then click on Podcast.
I actually personally love transcripts because I read way faster than people talk. So that's a great way to get insights really, really quickly. Until next time, this is John Katsir. Thank you so much for joining.
And this is Peggy Ann Saltz signing off from Mobile Heroes Uncensored.